Well, there are fears of a fresh wave of zombie companies following the Victorian government's business support package. Business groups are warning tax breaks contained in the package, which defer $1.7 billion in payments of payroll taxes until next financial year, will create further debts for businesses. The Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Council of Small Business of Australia and the Australian Industry Group welcomed the news, but say the money will do little to help businesses already struggling. Well, joining me now out of Melbourne is Liberal MP Tim Wilson. Tim, good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us as always. There's a few parts to pick open here when it comes to Melbourne, as there always is. First of all, I just want to get your thoughts on the protests that are taking place and have taken place for 2 weekends in a row now, and there are threats for them to continue. What's your view of that?
Well, my view has been consistent, unlike the Premier, where he tolerated the Black Lives Matter protests, even though I strongly believe in people's rights. The reality is getting large groups of people together at this time poses a very serious public health risk. There's a proportionate risk to the proportionate action, which to say people can't gather in large groups. And they're incredibly disappointing, and people should obey the law. But we shouldn't be surprised that when Victoria is used as a ideological petri dish, as it is at the moment, some measures, that you're going to get a backlash. And it's very disappointing. Yeah,
so people have got it coming. If people do choose to protest at the moment, they've got it coming.
Well, I wouldn't use that language. What I would say is the law is very clear. People should obey the law. People should understand and respect the fact that there are very serious risks, not just to themselves, but to the general community, from forming in large groups without proper measures being taken in place. And ultimately, the police have a job to enforce law. That doesn't condone violence on behalf of the police. Their job is to restore order, but nothing more. But when you get, sort of an ideological experiment like is occurring in Victoria at the moment, you're going to get, unfortunately, a backlash. It says something about, I guess, the increasing concern that many Victorians have about the measures being implemented by the state government, where there isn't proportionality to the measures and the benefits.
Some pretty big hitters have been quoted overnight talking about the curfews that are in place at the moment. The boss of CSL, as a matter of fact, Tim, says, open up, this isn't wartime. He makes the point that no one's using curfew at the moment around the world. What's your view of his comments? Do you agree with him?
Well, I agree with the spirit, which is that we have to find a safe way to open up. I'm not convinced that curfew is justified, but the public health officials have said that a curfew isn't justified. Yeah. Police have said that the curfew isn't justified. So it's only being implemented by the Premier for reasons he can't articulate. So I think we need to be realistic. But even if you remove the curfew, everybody's still going to be contained to 5 kilometres around their home. They're going to be only able to go out 23 hours a day. But I do think we've got to be realistic that there's going to be a long tail of human tragedy that is going to come as a consequence of the very harsh measures we're implementing now. And so, and I think there's been too much blindness on behalf of the state government about the consequences. When you're looking for a singular lens, you're ignoring the mental health impacts, the unidentified health impacts, and of course their economic impacts.
The Victorian opposition leader Michael O'Brien wants a royal commission into the events of Melbourne, in particular the second wave. Is that something that you agree with? Do you think that there should be?
There absolutely should be a royal commission looking at the oversight. Now, it doesn't matter whether everything went well or everything went poorly. We need to have a royal commission to establish how systems work, where there were failures, what worked, because there's no doubt that this could happen again at some point in the future. And therefore, we need to learn from the experience and identify what went right and what went wrong.
How would that be different to the inquiry that's already taking place at the moment?
Well, I think we need to have a whole oversight of every part, including how the Department of Health responded, how political leadership responded, how the police have responded, and of course, how issues around hotel quarantine responded. Also, measures like whether it's justified to close Melbourne Airport. You know, there are millions of us, or hundreds of thousands, I'd say, Australians overseas wanting to return, and because we've got the second largest airport in the country closed, it makes it very difficult to get Australians back. So I think there needs to be a whole list of about government.
On business now, the $3 billion in extra help that Daniel Andrews has announced over the weekend, how helpful do you think that would be? And is there still a risk that that may create problems or just delay the inevitable?
Well, unfortunately, I just think the state government doesn't really understand how businesses work, which is cash flow is king. And yes, this will help a little bit in the short term, but we've got loan deferrals to banks, we've got deferrals in rents to property owners, and of course now the state government is doing the same. And it's only going to build up a never-ending debt obligation that many small businesses that already live hand to mouth are going to struggle to meet. And let's not forget what will happen. Big business will be fine. What we'll see is small businesses being thrown to the wolves. And we're going to have a corporatist culture and corporatist dominance after this crisis if we keep putting more pressure on small business. Our job has to be able to lift them up rather than continue to defer and punish them.
And just finally, some 35,000 Australians, reports this morning, being watched by a Chinese intelligence company. What's your view of that? And does that surprise you?
Sadly, it didn't surprise me. It's very distressing and disturbing, but indicative of the surveillance system that the Chinese Communist Party has working around the world. And I think we've got to be very mindful and very diligent. We saw the Defence Minister come out recently and warn companies about the risks of espionage and online cyber attacks. But we also need to realise that it's going to be happening in every facet of people's lives, remote from Beijing, and people to be very alert to the real risk.
That's a lovely mountain range you've got behind you, Tim.
It's not a mountain range, it's Red Bluff, which is in the wonderful electorate of Goldstein. A very famous set of cliffs around Black Rock and Beaumaris, and they're famous in the Heidelberg School painting.
Okay, all right. Well, I like it. I'm just saying I like it. Tim Wilson, good to talk. Chat to you soon. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has taken aim at her Queensland counterpart.